Gervonta Davis is who he claims to be. He is who his fans say he is. He is who the analysts say he is. Like, he's the man at lightweight, right? I get it. He's the man at lightweight. And I get that he doesn't have all the belts. He isn't undisputed or anything like that. But look at the body of work that he's put together. Look at what he did tonight against Frank Martin. I mean, going into this fight, there was a couple main talking points, right? There was a couple themes. And the big ones that we can think of is, number one, Frank Martin is a good fighter. Nobody hesitated to put praise on Frank Martin, and rightfully so. I mean, look at what he's gone and done in the sport already, right? And we can look at him and we can talk about how he hasn't been in the sport for a super long time. He's not one of these guys who's been boxing since he was 7 years old, but that didn't take away from his accomplishments. Everybody said going in that this was going to be the most accomplished athlete that Gervonta Davis had faced, and that he was an incredibly talented boxer, right? And that brings us to the second point, which I kind of just mentioned. The other main talking point was the fact that he hadn't been doing it forever. He hasn't been one of those guys who's been in the sport since he was 7 years old. He doesn't have this super extensive amateur career and then continuing to build as a pro and everything like Gervonta Davis, right? And Leonard Ellerby said it at the press conference, or I kind of summed it up perfectly for the people that shared that talking point, which was, in boxing, you can't skip anything. You can't skip steps. There's levels to the game, and everybody on their side was saying, and a lot of other people, don't get me wrong, we saw how big of a favorite Tank was coming into the fight, but everyone on their side was saying, as good as Frank Martin is, for as many things as he does well, he's not on Gervonta Davis's level. He's never seen anybody like Tank, but Tank has seen everything that Frank Martin brings to the table. Now we get out there, and what do we see? We saw exactly what we always see from Tank, man. I mean, one of the things that I love about watching this sport for so long and seeing so many fighters develop is being able to see them develop their games, right? You see guys come out when they're young and they'll fight a certain way, and they'll have things that they just do phenomenally well. And then they'll have things where they've got these flaws. And you'll be able to see the way that their career transitions. You'll be able to see the way that their trainers impact them. You'll be able to see the way they develop. And some guys, they develop like Tank, or they develop like Canelo, or they develop like Mayweather, where they lean into who they are. Right? They lean into who they are. Like, everybody has innate natural qualities. We talk about Tank, the explosiveness, the hand speed, the punching power. Right? These are things that he's always going to have. Like, that dude's going to have power when he's 65 years old. That dude's going to have hand speed far longer than other guys have hand speed. He's going to have explosiveness far longer than other guys have explosiveness. Those are just innate qualities that he has. And he leans into them in his fighting style. He doesn't come out there and try to be a boxer. He doesn't try to dominate from the outside with the jab. He doesn't try to throw 70 punches around. Right? That's not his game. He comes out there. He's accurate. He's got great punch selection. He's got explosiveness. He knows, and now when he does it in a way that always benefits him. He didn't even throw more than 30 punches in a round until like the 7th round in this fight. Now, typically, if you hear a fighter do something like that, you would say that that's a recipe for disaster. How are you going to come in there and win a fight not even throwing more than 30 punches a round for the first 7 rounds of the fight at lightweight? This isn't heavyweight, right? This isn't something where all guys have this low work rate. This is 135 pounds. But Tank makes it work because of the way in which he executes. Dude, as soon as this fight started, we saw Tank come out there and apply tremendous pressure. But the trick was that he was applying it without throwing punches. And I say that because it was leaned into what everybody was talking about. Everybody was talking about the lack of experience that Frank Martin had, particularly at the highest levels. First time he was in a world championship fight, first time under the brightest of lights. Tank went out there and applied pressure to him, but he didn't throw punches. And what that does is it's going to tire Frank Martin out, right? Because Tank has this menacing presence in the ring, man. Everybody knows about the hand speed and the explosiveness and the punching power, so everybody's worried about it. So when all of a sudden this dude starts coming forward relentlessly, constantly working his way into punching range, you're always worried about what may come. Because when he's in punching range, he doesn't need to take that extra half step to get his shot off. He's right there. He can unload that left hand, man, in the blink of an eye, and it can be all over. So you're constantly on edge. You constantly have to be almost twitchy to be wary of what's coming at you. But he's not wearing any energy. He's not wearing himself out at all because he's not throwing any punches. He's coming forward in that defensive posture, right? He's in that high guard. He's coming forward. Dude, it's it does two things, right? Oh, it's beautiful to watch and it's great to think about, but it does two things. One, it forces Frank Martin to act, because Frank Martin isn't just going to stand there in punching range and not punch. That's a recipe for disaster. So as Tank comes forward, it forces Frank Martin to be offensive. He starts to work the jab. He's working the straight left hands. He's using the hooks, whatever it may be. And he looked good when he did it, but it forces him to be active. And then the second thing is the mental pressure. That mental pressure constantly having to be on, you can't have one moment of complacency when you're fighting someone with that kind of devastating power that Tank has. So he's always there, right? He's physically having to work, and mentally he just has to stay locked in for 180 seconds of every round. Can't slip for one moment. It's tiring, man. It breaks you down over the course of time. And then on top of it, Gervonta Davis is throwing, right? He's not going out there and throwing a lot of punches, but everything he's throwing hard. Everything he's throwing with bad intentions. Everything that he throws, he's throwing to impress upon Frank Martin. Dude, I'm right here and I'm super dangerous, and if you slip up for one moment, I'm going to take your head off, right? Everything he's doing is to impress upon that. Now, and then as the fight goes on, he starts to do it in a better and more efficient way. All of a sudden, he sees that Gervonta sees the headshots aren't landing. He starts going to the body. He sees he's not quite getting off first the way in which he wants to. He starts throwing ferocious counter punches, right? He starts seeing that Frank Martin isn't quite opening up enough the way that he wants. So he starts putting his hands down more, starts trying to invite and bait Frank a little bit more. Like he was walking him into the corners at all times, constantly cutting off the ropes. I mean, look, Frank Martin looked good at times in this fight, and the way in which he was circling off of the ropes, the way in which he was getting out of the corner, the way in which he was landing the jab, doubling, tripling the jab, the way he was landing the straight lefts, the way that he was mixing up his shots. He was doing a lot of great things. He was blocking a lot of the shots. I mean, but there's only so much you can do once you don't command the respect from your opponent, and he has got that kind of punching power. You know, it reached that point where we even saw Frank Martin land some beautiful counter shots. Tank ate them all, man. He ate them all. And I want to say it was after the fifth round, maybe the sixth round in the corner. You could see that the urgency was getting ramped up a little bit from Calvin Ford, right? Tank's trainer. He was saying, look, we got to win all these rounds. We got to go out here and we got to make this happen. And he was saying that because he could see that Frank Martin was outworking Tank in a lot of those rounds, never quite sure what the judges are going to say. He knew that Frank won at least 4 of those early rounds. So you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, we got to step it up. And Tank responded and he said he's got nothing left. He's got nothing in that left hand. And you knew at that point, he was already fighting as though he didn't have, the respect for what was coming back from Frank Martin, right? 'Cause that's the only thing that's going to keep a guy where. That's the only thing that's going to keep a guy off of you, is him knowing that if he slips up for one moment, if he comes forward too aggressively, if he gets off balance, and that you got something for him, right? That there's heat in the kitchen, that you're cooking with grease in there, and that you're going to let him know that you can't do that. You can't just come in recklessly on me because of what I'm throwing back. Frank Martin didn't have that. At least at that point in the fight, Frank Martin no longer had that. Whether it was the body shots, whether it was the mental fatigue that was wearing him down, whether, he only had above average power anyways, and Tank's just got a great chin and he's able to take those shots. Whatever the case may be, it reached that point in those middle rounds where Gervonta Davis no longer respected what was coming back, and then he just upped the pressure even more, walked him down relentlessly, until eventually he was able to just get his shot off, right? And he did it in beautiful fashion. Comes in, throws that combination, comes over the top with the left. He sees the left gets blocked, comes back with the uppercut. That uppercut stunned him. He was on the ropes, completely dazed, almost defenseless, and then he just tears his head off with that left hand. I mean, beautiful stuff from Gervonta Davis, man. Beautiful stuff. That's what you want to see from guys. I constantly say it. You don't want to see guys who start early in their career and they're just like a force of nature, right? Just a phenomenon, and they come through. And then all of a sudden they hit this point, maybe, who knows, 13, 14, 15, 20 fights in, and all of a sudden they stagnate. All of a sudden they can no longer do what they used to do, right? And it's because as that level of competition gets upped, they don't have all the tools in their bag to be able to go out there and still get their shots off, be able to go out there and still make things happen, be able to go out there and lead and counter, react and act, and all of those different types of things that you saw them do earlier in their career. And it's because against these higher level fighters, they just don't have the skills. That's not what you see from Gervonta Davis. Dude, I've talked about it before, and I'll say it again. I remember when he went out there early on in his career. He was a young dude, man, early on in his career. And there were times when you could see he was trying to figure it out. There were times where he was in these fights against veterans, and you could see that he was thinking his way through, that he was struggling a little bit. Like, man, my left hand isn't quite getting off the way I want. What am I going to do here? How am I going to do this? And slowly but surely, as things developed, you can see the point where he is now, where he just comes in there with supreme confidence. He just knows he's going to get the stoppage. He knows that it's going to end in knockout. He knows that those judges are sitting over there and they're scoring the rounds, but really they don't count. Really they don't matter. Really they're not going to have a say in the outcome of this fight. Like, that's what he comes in there with, this supreme confidence. And it shows, man. It shows in the way he fights. It shows in the performance. It shows in the outcome. It shows in the way people rate his skills. Like, the man's got it, right? The man's got it. Now, I will say this. For all of the praise that I've heaped on him in the past, talk about him in this fight, for all of those things, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that I think this style will eventually catch up with him. And it may be because of Father Time. We all know that Father Time's undefeated. But you can't, I don't like when a guy gives away so many rounds and almost needs the knockout. Because I can't help but feel that there's going to be that time when you go in there when you just can't get that guy out of there. Right? Think about Bernard Hopkins when he lost the title to Jermaine Taylor. Everyone says in that, you look, Bernard Hopkins won 5 rounds, the last rounds of that fight. He comes out and says he just didn't start early enough. If there were more rounds for Hopkins versus Taylor in their first fight, would he have been able to win? Would he have been able to pull it out? These are all speculation. But anytime you give away early rounds in a fight, you're always banking on the fact that you're either going to get the knockout or you're going to win all of the second half rounds and win them in dominant enough fashion that you're going to be able to pull it out. And I just don't like that as much as a guy who comes out there and tries to win every single round. Like, think about Floyd Mayweather. Floyd had an incredibly low output, didn't have the crazy punching power, fought from a defensive posture, particularly in the late half. Not early when he was Pretty Boy, but after when he was Moneyweather. I mean, you think about that. He went out there and he tried to win every single round. I just kind of like that more from a guy. And I get it that he had to, in the sense that he couldn't go out there and stop fights. He didn't have that devastating punch. He couldn't go out there and just knock guys out and land that one thing that would just all of a sudden completely change the course of a fight. So maybe, he completely developed his style differently because he didn't have that inherent advantage that we see from a guy like Gervonta Davis. But, I can't help but wonder, what if he's able to goes up there against a guy like Shakur Stevenson and he's not able to get that late punch? He's not able to go out there and intimidate him with that presence because a guy like Shakur is just so completely confident in his defensive ability, in his ability to stay in the pocket and evade everything that's coming back, land crisp enough counters that it keeps Gervonta off his P's and Q's and doesn't allow him to get his balance and get his shot off. I mean, I don't know, man. I wonder, right? Because we can look at this and we can say at points in this fight, he became reckless against Frank Martin with how aggressive he was coming forward. But the flip side of that is he knew he could be reckless because of what was coming back and because of what he knew that he could do and the way that Frank was reacting to his shots, right? So it's all kind of an ebb and a flow. And, I loved what the man has brought to the table so far. Can't wait to see what he does next, but it does make me wonder. It does make me wonder what's going to happen if he steps up in there against a younger guy like a Shakur Stevenson who's got an incredible boxing ability, can fight well from the outside, but also maybe feels comfortable in the pocket, isn't so intimidated when he's coming forward with the fast hands and the explosiveness. So I get it's all speculation. Man, which phenomenal performance by the man. My hat's off to Frank Martin. I hope he finds a way to build from it. I hope he finds a way to build from it and become a better fighter and learn from this experience and not allow it to put him on the back foot, not allow it to mentally accept that he's not going to be the man at 135 or he isn't, or that there's people that are better than him and he just kind of sets that. It's interesting to see what happens when a fighter takes his first loss, particularly when he ate a shot like that and it's a knockout. But the dude is incredibly skilled himself. So my hat's off to him for taking this fight. My hat's off to him for the performance that he put on. He came out there, in my opinion, with the intention to win. Some guys come out there with the intention to get a paycheck. Some guys come out there, and the first time they feel one of those shots, they try to survive. But that wasn't the vibe we got from him. So it'll be interesting to see what's next from him too. And let me know what you guys think. What did you think about this performance from Tank? Were you impressed with it? Did you think he was going to do more? Do you like the way he's kind of downloading and giving away those early rounds? And do you think it'll come back to bite him at any point in the future? Let me know what you guys think.